I'm Amanda, 34, living what I thought was the American dream in Chicago with my husband Michael of 8 years. We had it all: successful careers, a beautiful home, and supportive friends like Rachel, my college roommate who moved here 3 years ago. Then I saw that text notification on his phone. One glimpse changed everything I believed about my marriage and my friendship. What I discovered next, and how I printed every single secret message between them, shattered their perfect little affair forever. Before I tell you how I discovered my husband's betrayal with someone I trusted completely, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe and like if you've ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right in your relationship. I grew up in Boston in a close-knit family, always the ambitious one with big dreams. After graduating with honors in marketing, I moved to Chicago for a job opportunity that promised growth and excitement in the bustling city. I threw myself into building my career, working late nights and weekends to prove myself in a competitive industry. Romance wasn't my priority until fate stepped in at a charity gala 6 years ago. Michael stood out immediately. Tall with captivating green eyes and an infectious laugh, he approached me while I was admiring a painting up for auction. "The artist captured longing perfectly, don't you think?" he said. We spent the entire evening talking about everything from childhood memories to career aspirations. By the end of the night, I knew something special was happening. Our romance was a whirlwind. Michael worked as an architect at Fletcher & Associates, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. He was passionate about creating spaces that transformed lives, just as I was passionate about marketing campaigns that connected with people. We complemented each other perfectly, encouraging each other's ambitions while building something beautiful together. 6 months after meeting, he proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. 1 year later, we were married in a ceremony that felt like a dream. I remember standing at the altar, looking into his eyes, believing we would conquer the world together. Rachel was my maid of honor. We had been roommates in college, staying close despite the distance when she moved to New York after graduation. When she called 3 years ago saying she'd been offered a position at a publishing house in Chicago, I was ecstatic. My best friend and my husband in the same city, my life felt complete. After the wedding, Michael and I bought our dream home in Lincoln Park. We spent weekends painting walls, shopping for furniture, and planning for the future. We talked about having children in a year or two, once we both felt established in our careers. The spare bedroom was designated as the future nursery, painted a soft yellow that would work for any gender. Rachel quickly became a regular fixture in our home. Being single in a new city, she often joined us for dinner or weekend outings. Michael was always welcoming, saying he enjoyed having her around because any friend of Amanda's is family. I appreciated how they got along, never imagining their friendliness would evolve into something sinister. Our trio became inseparable. Rachel joined us for family holidays when she couldn't travel back east. We celebrated her birthdays with as much enthusiasm as we did our own. Michael and I even took her along on a vacation to California wine country, spending a week visiting vineyards and enjoying coastal views. Looking back, I see how abnormal it was to include her in so many intimate moments of our marriage. My career continued to flourish. I was promoted to marketing executive at my firm, leading campaigns for major national brands. Michael supported my success, attending company events and listening attentively when I shared work challenges. Similarly, I attended architecture galas on his arm, proud of the innovative buildings he was designing across the city. For our 5th wedding anniversary, Rachel helped Michael plan a surprise weekend getaway to a luxury resort in Wisconsin. She knew all my preferences, helping him select the perfect room with a lake view and arranging for my favorite flowers to be waiting upon arrival. I remember hugging her before we left, thanking her for being such a thoughtful friend. "You deserve everything," she said, a statement I would later replay with bitter irony. It was during this anniversary trip that I first noticed something odd. While we were having dinner on the terrace, Rachel called to check how we were enjoying the resort. Michael took the call, walking away from the table. When he returned, his eyes held a softness I recognized, the same expression he had when looking at me during our early dating days. When I asked about the call, he mentioned Rachel had just wanted to ensure everything was perfect for us. That night, I caught him texting someone after he thought I had fallen asleep. The blue light illuminated his face, and I saw a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. When I shifted in bed, he quickly put the phone down, claiming he was just checking work emails. I believed him, silencing the small voice of doubt beginning to whisper in my mind. Back in Chicago, I noticed Michael's eyes lingering on Rachel during our weekly dinner gatherings. The way they sometimes shared inside jokes or seemed to communicate without words started to bother me. But I dismissed these observations as my own insecurity, telling myself I was fortunate to have both a loving husband and a loyal friend who got along so well. How naive I was, interpreting the chemistry between them as friendly rapport rather than the beginning of betrayal. I trusted completely, never imagining that the two people closest to me were weaving an intricate web of deception right before my eyes. The first undeniable change I noticed was Michael suddenly password protecting his phone. For 6 years of marriage, we had always known each other's passwords, not because we snooped, but because we had nothing to hide. When I casually asked about it, he claimed increased security requirements at work necessitated better protection on personal devices. It seemed reasonable enough at the time. Another new habit emerged. Michael began showering immediately after coming home from work. Previously, he would unwind first, having a drink with me while we discussed our days. Now, he would barely give me a quick kiss before disappearing into the bathroom. When I mentioned this change, he explained that a new cycling program at his gym before coming home left him feeling sweaty and uncomfortable. Rachel, meanwhile, developed an unusual interest in my schedule. She began asking about my work trips with specific questions about departure and return times. I initially thought she was being considerate, perhaps planning to keep Michael company while I was away. Her questions became so regular that I even joked about her keeping a calendar of my movements. During one business trip to New York, Michael was unusually difficult to reach. Our nightly video calls, a tradition during separations, became brief and infrequent. He claimed intense pressure on a new project requiring late nights at the office. I accepted his explanation, even feeling guilty for wanting more of his time when he was clearly stressed. I returned home a day early, hoping to surprise him with takeout from our favorite restaurant. When I pulled into our driveway at 4 p.m. on a Thursday, I was surprised to see Rachel's blue Honda parked on the street. Entering our home, I found them in the kitchen, an unusual tension hanging in the air. Rachel clutched a folder, explaining she was dropping off reference materials for a building Michael was designing similar to one published in her company's architectural magazine. I was just leaving, she said, giving Michael a look I couldn't quite interpret. Welcome home early. What a nice surprise. Michael seemed flustered, quickly taking the folder and thanking her. After she left, he pulled me into an embrace that felt somewhat forced. I missed you, he said, but his eyes didn't quite meet mine. In the weeks that followed, Michael became increasingly critical of small things about me. My cooking wasn't as flavorful as it used to be. My choice of clothing was too conservative or too flashy. Even my laugh, which he once called his favorite sound, now sometimes elicited a wince. Each criticism was delivered with a just trying to help disclaimer that left me questioning myself rather than his sudden dissatisfaction. Determined to rekindle our connection, I planned special date nights and weekend getaways. I booked a cooking class we had talked about taking, surprised him with tickets to see his favorite band, and organized a weekend at a bed and breakfast in Michigan. During these intentional times together, our relationship seemed to improve. He was attentive, affectionate, and reminiscent of the man I had married. These improvements proved temporary. Within days of returning from our weekend away, the distance returned. His phone remained glued to his hand, and he began taking calls in another room or outside on the porch. Rachel became my confidant during this confusing time. Over lunch or coffee, I would share my concerns about Michael's behavior and the growing distance between us. She listened sympathetically, offering advice that I now recognize was subtly undermining. Men sometimes go through phases where they need space, she would say. Maybe you're being too available to him. Mystery keeps relationships alive. Or she would suggest, your work schedule is pretty demanding. Michael might feel neglected when you're so focused on your career. Her counsel always placed the responsibility on me to change, to accommodate, to understand Michael's needs better. Never once did she suggest his behavior might be problematic or that my concerns were valid. One evening while reviewing our monthly expenses, I discovered a charge for the Langham Hotel downtown. We had not stayed there, and it wasn't a business expense Michael had mentioned. When I questioned him about it, he explained it away as a lunch meeting with clients that had extended into using a day room to review plans. His explanation was detailed and convincing, including names of clients I had heard him mention before. You can call my assistant to confirm if you're really worried, he offered, knowing I never would. His willingness to provide verification made me feel foolish for questioning him. I apologized for doubting him, yet the uneasiness lingered. Rachel began stopping by our house more frequently when she knew I would be working late. Just checking on Michael, she would text me. Brought him dinner since you're stuck at the office. Her thoughtfulness seemed above and beyond, yet I felt grateful someone was looking after him when I couldn't be there. The physical intimacy between Michael and me became strangely disconnected. He still initiated sex, but something essential was missing. His mind seemed elsewhere, his movements mechanical rather than passionate. Afterward, he would immediately check his phone or head to the shower instead of holding me close, as he once did. I began to wonder if I was becoming paranoid or if my instincts were trying to alert me to something genuinely wrong. Each explanation for his behavior seemed plausible in isolation, but collectively they formed a pattern I could not ignore. Still, I convinced myself that marriages go through phases and that patience and love would see us through this difficult period. How wrong I was to doubt myself instead of the two people actively betraying me with each passing day. As spring turned to summer, I could no longer ignore the frequent text exchanges between Michael and Rachel. At group gatherings, their phones would often buzz simultaneously, followed by them checking their messages with poorly concealed smiles. If I happened to glance toward Michael's phone, he would quickly turn it away or lock the screen. Then came the accidental discoveries that in retrospect were either careless mistakes or subconscious desires to be caught. One evening after Rachel had joined us for dinner, I found a delicate silver earring between the passenger seat cushions in Michael's car. I recognized it immediately as part of a set I had complimented Rachel on weeks earlier. Must have fallen out when she rode with me to pick up dessert, Michael explained casually when I showed him. The explanation made sense, yet something in his too quick response felt rehearsed. Another time, I noticed Rachel's scarf smelled distinctly of Michael's cologne when she forgot it at our house. When I mentioned it offhandedly, she laughed it off, saying, I probably picked up the scent when Michael helped me with my coat. Simple explanations for simple occurrences, yet collectively they began to form a disturbing pattern. Michael forgot our anniversary that year, the first time in our marriage. Just 2 weeks later, he presented Rachel with an expensive leather portfolio for her birthday, embossed with her initials. You mentioned it months ago, he told her at her birthday dinner, and I knew it would be perfect for your client meetings. The thoughtfulness of the gift and his memory of a passing comment stood in stark contrast to his forgetfulness about our significant date. My growing anxiety began affecting my work performance. Presentations lacked my usual confidence, and I found myself distracted during important meetings. My boss noticed, gently suggesting I might benefit from taking some personal days. Instead, I sought help privately, making an appointment with a therapist to discuss my mounting suspicions and anxiety. Dr. Winters listened patiently as I detailed my concerns, neither dismissing them nor fueling my suspicions. Relationships thrive on open communication, she advised after several sessions. Rather than investigating, try having an honest conversation about how you're feeling disconnected. Following her advice, I planned a quiet evening at home to talk with Michael. I prepared his favorite meal and approached the conversation with care, focusing on my feelings rather than accusations. "I've been feeling a distance between us lately," I began. "I miss the connection we used to have." Michael's response was a masterclass in gaslighting. He expressed surprise at my feelings, insisted nothing had changed, and suggested my work stress was causing me to create problems that didn't exist. By the end of the conversation, I was apologizing to him for being oversensitive and imagining issues in our perfectly fine marriage. Meanwhile, Rachel's behavior toward me subtly shifted. Her compliments became backhanded. "That outfit is so brave for your body type," or "your presentation style is unique." I could never be so casual with important clients. Each comment contained a tiny barb designed to diminish my confidence while maintaining plausible deniability if challenged. Michael's secret phone calls increased. He would step outside to take calls, returning with explanations about work stress and difficult clients. His architectural firm was supposedly going through a challenging period with demanding projects and tight deadlines. This explanation covered everything from his distraction to his late nights away from home. I found myself increasingly isolated from other friendships as I focused on saving my marriage. Invitations from colleagues and other friends were declined in favor of being available whenever Michael was home. The irony was painful, sacrificing my social connections to prioritize a relationship that was being actively betrayed. The situation escalated when Michael informed me he would be attending a weekend conference in Detroit. Something about his demeanor seemed off, so I did something I never thought I would. I checked his work calendar through our shared Apple account. There was no conference scheduled. When confronted, he claimed it was so recently arranged it hadn't been added to the calendar yet. He even showed me an email confirmation that looked legitimate enough to make me doubt my suspicions. A week later, I discovered an app on our shared tablet showing frequent visits to an address just 2 blocks from Rachel's apartment building. The app had been logged into Michael's account and never signed out. These visits always occurred during times he claimed to be at client meetings or working late at the office. Gathering my courage, I confronted Rachel directly, asking if she had been seeing Michael near her apartment. Her surprise seemed genuine, followed by an explanation that dissolved my immediate suspicion. "Oh, Michael's been helping me surprise you. There's a jewelry designer in my building who's creating a custom piece for your birthday. I wanted it to be special since you've been such an amazing friend through my transition to Chicago." The explanation was perfect, thoughtful, plausible, and making me feel guilty for my suspicion. I apologized profusely for doubting both of them, ignoring the small voice inside that whispered this was too convenient an explanation. After all, my birthday was still 3 months away. I chose to believe her because the alternative was too painful to consider. But deep down, something had shifted. I began paying closer attention, noting discrepancies in their stories and watching their interactions with new awareness. The evidence was mounting, but I needed irrefutable proof before I could acknowledge the betrayal that was becoming increasingly difficult to deny. My 34th birthday arrived on a perfect September evening. Michael had made reservations at Alinea, an exclusive restaurant requiring bookings months in advance. I spent extra time getting ready, choosing a new dress I hoped would remind him of the woman he fell in love with. For a few precious hours, I allowed myself to believe this special occasion might bridge the growing chasm between us. Rachel had promised to join us, but texted last minute claiming food poisoning from lunch. "So disappointed to miss celebrating you," her message read. "Have an amazing time with Michael. You deserve it." I felt a flicker of disappointment, but focused on enjoying the evening with my husband. Throughout dinner, Michael seemed distracted, checking his phone repeatedly despite the restaurant's elegant atmosphere that typically demanded full attention. Each notification brought a subtle change to his expression, a softening around his eyes, or a quick suppressed smile. When I asked if everything was okay, he claimed work emergencies requiring his attention. "Can't your colleagues handle one evening without you?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light despite the familiar disappointment. "Of course, you're right," he agreed, putting his phone face down. Less than 10 minutes later, it buzzed again. This time, he excused himself entirely. "I'm sorry, I need to make a quick call. The client is in Tokyo and it's already morning there." As he walked toward the restaurant's entrance, something inside me snapped. This was my birthday dinner at one of Chicago's finest restaurants. If there was ever a time work could wait, this was it. Making a split-second decision, I followed him, maintaining enough distance to remain unnoticed. Near the coat check, I heard his voice, not discussing architectural plans with a Japanese client, but speaking in low, intimate tones. "I wish I was with you too." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. Just a couple more hours, and I'll make an excuse. I miss touching you." My heart pounded so loudly I feared he would hear it. The world around me blurred, sound becoming muffled as though I were underwater. This wasn't ambiguous evidence to be rationalized away. This was confirmation of my worst fears spoken in my husband's voice on my birthday. Somehow I made it to the restroom before he could see me. I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection as reality crashed down around me. The woman looking back at me seemed like a stranger, eyes wide with shock, complexion pale beneath careful makeup. In that moment, I made a decision. I would not confront him yet. I needed to understand the full extent of their betrayal before taking action. Returning to the table, I channeled every ounce of strength to appear normal. I smiled at appropriate moments, asked questions about his latest project, and even managed to enjoy the exquisite dessert while my mind raced with plans and possibilities. "This has been wonderful," I said as we left the restaurant, the lie bitter on my tongue. "Thank you for such a special birthday." That night, I lay awake beside the man who had shattered my trust, listening to his even breathing and wondering how long the affair had been going on. By morning, I had formulated a plan. I called my office, something I rarely did, and took a personal day without telling Michael. After he left for work, I drove to a coffee shop and waited, watching the time. At precisely 10 a.m., I drove past Rachel's apartment building. The sight of Michael's black Audi parked in the visitor section sent a wave of nausea through me despite my suspicions. For 20 minutes, I sat in my car around the corner, gathering courage and fighting back tears. This confrontation would change everything, and I needed to be prepared. Finally, I approached the building, fortune favoring me when a delivery person held the door open. I thanked them with a casual wave, my heart pounding as I took the elevator to the 4th floor. Walking down the hallway to apartment 412, I rehearsed what I might say, though no words seemed adequate for the moment. As I approached her door, I noticed it wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar as though someone had been too distracted to check it had latched properly. I stood frozen, hearing murmured voices and soft laughter from within. With one deep breath, I pushed the door open. The scene burned itself permanently into my memory. Michael and Rachel on her couch, partially undressed, his hands in her hair, her lipstick smeared across his neck. The intimate tableau left no room for innocent explanations or gaslighting. They jumped apart, faces transforming from passion to shock in an instant. Rachel clutched a throw pillow to her chest while Michael fumbled with his shirt buttons. "Amanda." His voice cracked on my name. "This isn't. We were just." "Just what, Michael?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, eerily calm despite the hurricane of emotions within. "Just betraying me? Just destroying our marriage? Please, finish your sentence." Rachel began crying, tears I now recognized as performative. "Amanda, you don't understand. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened." Affairs don't just happen, Rachel. They require hundreds of deliberate choices and lies. I looked between them, these strangers wearing familiar faces. How long? Neither answered immediately, their silence confirmation enough. I asked how long you've been sleeping with my husband. Amanda, we should discuss this privately. Michael stood, reaching toward me. I stepped back. We're well past privacy, don't you think? After all, you've included Rachel in our marriage quite thoroughly already. Finally, Rachel whispered, almost 3 years. The timeline hit me like a physical blow. 3 years since shortly after she moved to Chicago. While I welcomed her into my home, included her in holidays, consoled her through bad dates and career challenges, all while she was sleeping with my husband. I see. Those 2 words contained oceans of pain, but I refused to break down in front of them. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't come home tonight, Michael. I'll have my lawyer contact you both. I turned and walked out, ignoring their calls and pleas to talk. In my car, I sat with hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but I didn't cry. Numbness had replaced the initial shock, a protective emptiness spreading through me as I drove home on autopilot. Inside our house, no longer a home, I moved with strange purpose. I went directly to our bedroom closet, reaching for Michael's golf bag where he thought I never looked. Inside the zippered side pocket, I found what I suspected existed, a second phone. The device was password protected, but I knew Michael's patterns. After 3 attempts, I entered our anniversary date and watched the screen unlock. The evidence was more abundant than I could have imagined. Years of messages detailing their affair, photos I could never unsee, plans made while I worked late or traveled for business. They discussed me in these exchanges, sometimes with pity, sometimes with annoyance, when my presence complicated their plans. One exchange from the previous Christmas particularly gutted me. Michael, had to get Amanda 2 presents to explain the cost of your bracelet on our card. Rachel, was it worth it? Michael, you're always worth it. Can't wait to see you wear only the bracelet later. I spent hours reading through their betrayal, documenting everything methodically despite my shaking hands. The affair had begun just 4 months after Rachel moved to Chicago, when I was working on a major campaign that kept me at the office late. What I had perceived as Michael's supportiveness during that stressful period had actually been relief at my absence, creating opportunities for them to be together. They had taken a weekend trip together when I attended my grandmother's funeral in Boston, claiming Rachel was too busy with work to join me in supporting my family during our loss. They had been together in our bed when I was delayed overnight in Denver due to weather. Each revelation was another nail in the coffin of my marriage, another strike against a friendship I had treasured. Yet somehow, amid the devastating heartbreak, a strange clarity emerged. I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, I began planning exactly how I would ensure their betrayal would be exposed in a way neither could deny or escape. The week following my discovery passed in a blur of focused activity. I called my office, requesting emergency personal leave due to a family crisis. My boss, hearing the strain in my voice, approved 2 weeks without hesitation. This gave me precious time to execute my plan while maintaining the appearance of normalcy to Michael, who was now staying at a hotel but still attempting to contact me constantly. My first step was consulting with Diana Hoffman, a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague who had navigated her own difficult divorce the previous year. In her sleek downtown office, I laid out the evidence of Michael's infidelity, including screenshots from the secret phone. You've done well documenting everything, Diana noted approvingly. Many clients come to me with suspicions but no proof. You've built a solid case. She explained Illinois' divorce laws, the process for filing, and how adultery might impact our financial settlement. As a no-fault divorce state, the affair wouldn't legally change much, but Diana assured me the evidence would give us leverage in negotiations. Men like Michael care about their reputation, she observed. The threat of public exposure often motivates generous settlements. That afternoon, I visited our bank, opening a separate account and transferring half of our joint savings, a move Diana had advised was legal and prudent. I collected important documents, birth certificates, property deeds, tax returns, investment statements, and insurance policies, making copies of everything. At home, I changed the passwords on my personal accounts and created a detailed inventory of our possessions, taking photos of valuable items. I was preparing for war while Michael still believed he could charm his way back into my life. His texts alternated between desperate pleas for forgiveness and attempts to minimize what had happened. It meant nothing. "You're the one I love. We can fix this with counseling. It was just physical. Please talk to me. You're overreacting. We need to discuss this calmly." Each message strengthened my resolve. If he had immediately shown genuine remorse, taken full responsibility, or offered complete transparency, perhaps a small part of me might have considered the painful path of reconciliation. Instead, his responses revealed his true character, someone who would continue manipulating the truth to serve his interests. I didn't respond to his messages, but I was building my response in another form entirely. Using the office supplies delivered to our home, I began printing. Hundreds of pages of their text exchanges, emails, and photos documenting their 3-year affair emerged from our printer. I organized these chronologically in 3 binders, using highlighters to mark particularly damning exchanges. One section contained messages proving they had been together during specific events. Michael to Rachel. Amanda's at her college friend's wedding this weekend. 3 full days together at your place. Another section highlighted the calculated nature of their deception. Rachel to Michael. Tell her your client meeting ran late. I've ordered dinner for us already. Most painful were the messages showing how they discussed me. Rachel. Does she really not notice how often you're gone? Michael. Amanda trusts completely. It's almost too easy. I created a timeline connecting these messages with events in our lives, noting specific instances when I had been lied to directly. The resulting documentation was irrefutable evidence of their prolonged betrayal. With the evidence compiled, I moved to the next phase of my plan. I contacted Michael's parents, Tom and Barbara, whom I had always been close with. Without revealing the affair, I expressed concerns about our marriage and invited them to Chicago for a special anniversary dinner the following weekend. They accepted immediately, concerned by my vague allusions to relationship troubles. Similarly, I reached out to Rachel's parents, who lived in Milwaukee, suggesting a surprise gathering to celebrate Rachel's recent promotion, a fabrication, but they embraced the idea enthusiastically. Other invitations went to our closest friends and several of Michael's colleagues and clients with whom we had socialized regularly. When Michael called, I finally answered, my voice carefully neutral. Amanda, thank God. We need to talk about what happened. You're right, I agreed, surprising him with my calm demeanor. I've been thinking about everything, and I realize we need to discuss this properly. His relief was palpable. I'm so sorry, Amanda. It was a terrible mistake. Rachel means nothing to me. I swallowed my disgust at his continued lies. I think we should discuss this with our families present. I've invited your parents to dinner this Saturday. Rachel's parents will be there too. What? Why would you? Because this affects everyone, I interrupted. 7 o'clock at Giovanni's. The private room is booked under my name. Don't be late. Before he could protest further, I ended the call. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with texts from both Michael and Rachel, panicked messages about involving families and suggesting smaller, private conversations instead. I ignored them all. The day of the dinner, I arrived at Giovanni's an hour early to ensure everything was arranged perfectly. The private dining room was set for 14 people, with place cards I had carefully positioned. Michael's parents would sit directly across from Rachel's. Close friends were distributed strategically around the table. At each place setting, I placed a sealed manila envelope with the person's name written on it. These would remain untouched until the appropriate moment. Guests began arriving at 6:45. I greeted everyone warmly, accepting hugs and making small talk as though this were truly a celebration. Michael arrived looking tense, but attempting confidence, while Rachel slipped in minutes later, her face pale beneath carefully applied makeup. "What are you doing?" Michael whispered when he managed to get me alone for a moment. "Your parents are here." "Rachel's parents." "My boss." "I'm serving truth for dinner," I replied simply. "Everyone deserves to know who you really are." The meal progressed through appetizers and main courses with surface-level pleasantries. I participated in conversations about weather, recent films, and neighborhood developments with surprising ease, a strange calm having settled over me. As dessert was served, I stood and tapped my glass with a spoon. All eyes turned to me expectantly, many smiling in anticipation of what they assumed would be a toast. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began. Family gatherings like this are precious opportunities for honesty and connection. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Some of you might be wondering why I've brought everyone together. The invitation mentioned an anniversary celebration or a promotion, depending on who received it. I paused, making eye contact with several guests. The truth is, I wanted all the people most important to Michael, Rachel, and me together for what I'm about to share. Michael half rose from his chair. "Amanda, this isn't the place." "Please sit down, Michael. You've had 3 years to speak your truth and chose not to. Now it's my turn." The confusion around the table was palpable as Michael sank back into his seat. "The envelopes at your places contain evidence of a 3-year affair between my husband Michael and my best friend Rachel. An affair that continued while Rachel advised me on saving my marriage. An affair they conducted in our home when I traveled for work." Gasps and shocked expressions spread around the table. Rachel's mother brought her hand to her mouth, while Michael's father's face darkened with anger. "You're welcome to open your envelopes now. Inside you'll find dated text messages and other documentation. Each person has received different selections relevant to them specifically." Trembling hands reached for envelopes. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of paper rustling and occasional sharp intakes of breath as guests encountered particularly shocking revelations. "For instance," I continued, "Tom and Barbara, yours contains messages from Michael planning to meet Rachel while you were staying with us last Thanksgiving. He claimed to be working on an emergency project." Michael's mother looked up from the papers, tears streaming down her face. "Michael, how could you?" "And Mr. and Mrs. Peterson," I addressed Rachel's parents. "Yours includes conversations where Rachel jokes about helping me plan my anniversary surprise while sleeping with my husband." Rachel's father pushed his chair back abruptly. "We didn't raise you this way, Rachel." I remained standing as the room erupted in confused conversations, accusations, and expressions of disgust. Michael attempted damage control, his voice rising above the chaos. "This is a private matter between Amanda, Rachel, and me. There's no need to involve everyone in our personal issues." "Privacy is a privilege you forfeited," I responded evenly. "You involved everyone here when you lied to their faces for 3 years. You used business dinners as covers for your affair. You accepted Rachel into family holidays while betraying me. You made everyone here complicit in your deception without their knowledge." Rachel broke down sobbing, her carefully constructed image of the supportive friend crumbling as her parents read through her own words. "Amanda, please stop this. We can talk privately." "We're well past that option," I replied. "You both had countless opportunities to come clean, to end the affair, to respect me enough for honesty. Instead, you chose to continue betraying me until I caught you myself." Several friends approached to hug me or express their shock and support. Michael's boss, reading through messages where Michael had claimed client meetings as cover for trysts, wore an expression of professional concern beyond personal disappointment. Rachel eventually fled the room in humiliation, unable to face her parents' questioning. Michael attempted to follow her but was intercepted by his father, whose expression promised a difficult conversation. As the gathering dissolved into smaller groups processing the revelations, I felt a strange sense of peace descend. The truth, however painful, was now in the open. The burden of their secret was no longer mine to carry alone. The web of lies they had constructed so carefully had unraveled completely in a single evening. I thanked everyone for coming, apologized for the difficult situation, and paid the bill before leaving. Whatever conversations continued after my departure would occur without me. My part in the evening's drama was complete, and I walked out with my head high, knowing I had reclaimed my dignity in the face of ultimate betrayal. The house felt cavernous when I returned home that night. The silence held a different quality than before, no longer the heavy weight of secrets, but rather the open emptiness of truth finally spoken. I moved through the room slowly, seeing our home with new eyes. The couch where we had spent countless evenings. The kitchen where we had cooked together. The photographs documenting a marriage that had been undermined for nearly half its existence. Michael arrived an hour later, his face haggard and his confident demeanor completely shattered. "How could you humiliate me like that?" His voice wavered between anger and desperation. "In front of my parents? My boss? How could you betray me for 3 years with my best friend?" I countered calmly. "Your public humiliation lasted 1 evening. Mine would have continued indefinitely if I hadn't discovered the truth." He collapsed onto the couch, head in his hands. "I never meant to hurt you." "That might be the biggest lie yet," I said. "Every secret meeting, every hidden message, every time you gaslit me about my suspicions, each was a deliberate choice to hurt me rather than be honest." For the first time, genuine remorse seemed to break through his defensive exterior. "I do love you, Amanda. The affair, it started as something physical, but then it became complicated, and I didn't know how to end it without everyone getting hurt. Yet here we are, everyone hurt anyway, but now with 3 wasted years we can't get back." I sat in the armchair across from him, maintaining physical and emotional distance. "I need you to leave tonight. Stay at your hotel or with a friend. My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow. We can work through this," he pleaded. "Couples survive affairs. We could try counseling." This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, Michael. This was a systematic deception involving the 2 people I trusted most. There's nothing to salvage. After more fruitless attempts to change my mind, he finally packed an overnight bag. At the door, he turned back. "I never deserved you." "No," I agreed. "You didn't." After he left, I methodically moved through the house, removing evidence of our marriage. Wedding photos went into boxes. His toiletries were packed away. I changed the sheets on our bed, unable to sleep on them knowing what I now knew. Only then, alone in the house that had witnessed so much deception, did I finally allow myself to break down. The tears came in waves, violent sobs that left me gasping for breath. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the friendship I had valued, for the future I had planned that now lay in ruins. I cried until exhaustion claimed me, falling asleep on the couch as dawn light began filtering through the windows. The divorce process began immediately. Diana, my attorney, moved efficiently, filing paperwork and negotiating terms. Michael, perhaps motivated by guilt or fear of further exposure, proved surprisingly amenable to a generous settlement. The house would be sold, assets divided equitably, and the process kept as amicable as possible under the circumstances. News of our separation and its dramatic revelation spread quickly through our social circles. I received countless messages of support from friends and colleagues, many expressing shock at Rachel's involvement. Several admitted they had noticed concerning interactions, but hadn't wanted to upset me with unconfirmed suspicions. Rachel's professional life took an immediate hit. 2 authors she represented withdrew from her agency after learning of her role in the affair, citing ethical concerns about working with her. The publishing world, though not generally known for moral strictness, apparently drew the line at sleeping with your best friend's husband for 3 years. Michael's architecture firm, concerned about potential reputation damage, reassigned several of his major projects to other partners. While he wasn't fired outright, his path to partnership was clearly derailed. Several clients who had been at the revelation dinner requested different architects for their projects. The process of explaining to extended family proved emotionally exhausting. Phone calls with cousins, aunts, and distant relatives all required recounting painful details. I developed an abbreviated version that provided enough information without rehashing every betrayal. Michael had a 3-year affair with my friend Rachel. I discovered it, confirmed it beyond doubt, and am moving forward with divorce. My emotional state fluctuated wildly during those first weeks. Some days brought rage so intense I fantasized about destroying Michael's prized possessions. Other days brought debilitating sadness that left me unable to get out of bed. Occasionally, despite everything, I experienced confusing moments of missing him, not the man who had betrayed me, but the man I had believed him to be. Therapy became my lifeline through this turbulent period. Dr. Winters helped me process the complex emotions of betrayal without allowing them to consume me. "You're experiencing grief," she explained. "Not just for the end of your marriage, but for the loss of the marriage you thought you had, which never actually existed." The temptation to check on Michael and Rachel was strong. Social media made it too easy to monitor their lives from a distance. Had they stayed together after the exposure? Was their relationship surviving the fallout? I fought this unhealthy curiosity, eventually blocking both of them on all platforms to remove the temptation entirely. Through mutual friends, I eventually learned they had broken up within weeks of the exposure. Rachel had moved back east, unable to rebuild her reputation in Chicago. Michael remained, diminished professionally and socially, telling anyone who would listen that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. This information brought no satisfaction. Their relationship status had ceased to matter to me. My focus had shifted entirely to my own healing and future. The first small victory came 3 months after Discovery Day. I slept through the night without waking to replay scenes of betrayal. Another milestone arrived when I genuinely laughed at a colleague's joke during a team lunch, the sound surprising me with its authenticity. Selling our home proved emotionally challenging, but financially necessary. Walking through empty rooms during the final inspection, I remembered the hopes and dreams we had shared when purchasing it. Yet leaving for the last time felt unexpectedly liberating, like shedding a skin that no longer fit. My new apartment in Wicker Park became a sanctuary. Smaller than our house, but filled only with things I had chosen, it represented a fresh start. I painted the walls colors Michael would have vetoed, arranged furniture for my comfort alone, and created a space that reflected only my tastes and preferences. 6 months after the discovery, I realized an entire day had passed without thinking about Michael or Rachel. This simple fact, that they no longer occupied constant space in my thoughts, felt like crossing an important threshold in my recovery. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, but its grip had loosened enough to allow room for new experiences and possibilities. Friends who had witnessed my journey commented on the change they observed. "You seem more yourself now than you did even before the divorce," my college roommate Katie remarked during her visit. "There's a confidence that wasn't there before." She was right. Surviving betrayal had revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed. The woman who had methodically gathered evidence, confronted her husband and former friend, and orchestrated a dramatic but effective exposure was someone I barely recognized, yet someone I was growing to admire. This new version of myself moved through the world differently. I spoke more directly, trusted my instincts without second-guessing, and established boundaries without apology. The painful experience had burned away a layer of unnecessary politeness and people-pleasing tendencies, revealing a more authentic core beneath. 1 year after discovering Michael and Rachel's affair, the divorce was finalized with a judge's signature on documents that officially ended 8 years of marriage. I expected to feel dramatic emotion when my lawyer called with the news, perhaps renewed grief or celebratory relief. Instead, I felt a quiet sense of closure, the final page turning on a chapter that had contained both beautiful and devastating moments. The journey through grief had not followed a linear path. Some days still brought unexpected waves of sadness or anger, particularly around significant dates or when encountering places that held strong memories. But these episodes grew less frequent and less intense with time, like aftershocks following a major earthquake. New friendships formed during this period of rebuilding, people who knew me only as I was now, not as half of a couple or as the woman whose husband had an affair with her best friend. These relationships felt refreshingly simple, unburdened by complicated history or pitying knowledge of my past. I approached these new connections with greater discernment, no longer ignoring red flags or dismissing my intuition when something felt wrong. This wasn't cynicism, but rather healthy self-protection born from hard-won wisdom. My career flourished as I channeled energy previously spent maintaining my marriage into professional growth. 6 months after the divorce, I received a promotion to creative director, overseeing campaigns for our agency's largest clients. The increased responsibility and creative challenges provided welcome focus during a period of personal transition. I rediscovered passions that had gradually been sidelined during my marriage. Photography, which I had loved in college but abandoned due to time constraints, became a weekend pursuit. I joined a hiking group that explored trails throughout Illinois and neighboring states. These activities connected me with people who shared my interests rather than simply being part of my husband's social circle. The prospect of dating again initially seemed inconceivable. The idea of trusting someone enough to become vulnerable felt like touching a hand to a hot stove after being severely burned. My therapist encouraged patience, reminding me that healing couldn't be rushed and that being comfortable with my own company was a necessary foundation for any future relationship. Eventually, 14 months after the divorce, I accepted a dinner invitation from James, a creative director from a partner agency whom I had known professionally for years. The evening was pleasant, our conversation easy and interesting. When he texted afterwards suggesting a second date, I surprised myself by agreeing without hesitation. Dating in my mid-30s with the wisdom of past experience proved entirely different from dating in my 20s. I knew myself better. My values, deal breakers, and needs in a relationship. I approached potential connections with honesty about my past without allowing it to define my future. The most valuable lesson from my failed marriage wasn't about avoiding betrayal, but rather about trusting myself. Looking back, I recognized countless moments when my intuition had flagged concerning behaviors, only for me to dismiss these warnings as paranoia or insecurity. Never again would I override that internal wisdom to preserve someone else's comfort or a relationship's appearance. This self-trust extended beyond romantic relationships into all areas of life. I became more assertive at work, more selective with friendships, and more willing to establish boundaries when needed. The painful experience of betrayal had paradoxically freed me from excessive concern about others' opinions or approval. 18 months after the divorce, I unexpectedly encountered Michael at a networking event for Chicago's creative professionals. He looked diminished somehow, his confident posture replaced by a slight stoop, designer clothes hanging on a frame that had lost weight. When our eyes met across the room, he froze momentarily before approaching with visible nervousness. "Amanda," he said, his voice carrying none of its former charm. "You look well." "Thank you," I replied, surprised by my own lack of emotional reaction. This man who had once been the center of my world now seemed like a distant acquaintance. "How have you been?" Our conversation remained civil but brief. He mentioned struggling professionally since several clients had followed me to my new position. He had started therapy, he said, trying to understand the choices he had made. He asked if I was seeing anyone, a question I deflected politely but firmly. As we prepared to part ways, he said something unexpected. "You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused." For the first time, his apology seemed genuine rather than self-serving. I nodded acknowledgement, not offering absolution but recognizing the importance of the moment for both of us. "Take care of yourself, Michael." Walking away, I realized the encounter had brought neither pain nor satisfaction, just a neutral recognition of a person who had once been important but now occupied no significant space in my life. This, perhaps more than anything, confirmed how far I had come in my healing journey. Through mutual connections, I learned Rachel had relocated to Seattle after failing to rebuild her reputation in publishing on the East Coast. She had apparently reached out to mutual friends expressing remorse, but those bridges had been thoroughly burned. While I wished her neither harm nor particular success, her life choices had removed her permanently from my circle of concern. When I reflected on the red flags I had ignored, patterns emerged that might help others avoid similar pain. The password-protected phone, the sudden showering after work, the increasing criticism, the unexplained charges and locations. Each sign taken individually could be explained away, but collectively they painted a clear picture I had been unwilling to see. This insight led me to start an anonymous blog sharing my experience and the wisdom gained from it. Writing about betrayal, recovery, and rebuilding became unexpectedly therapeutic, transforming pain into purpose. The comments section filled with stories from others navigating similar journeys, creating a community of support and understanding. Several women contacted me privately, seeking advice about their own suspicions or confirmed betrayals. I found myself becoming an informal mentor, helping them establish boundaries, gather information, and make decisions aligned with their own best interests rather than fear or misplaced loyalty. The freedom that came from facing my worst relationship fear, betrayal and abandonment, was perhaps the most unexpected gift of this difficult journey. Having survived what once seemed unsurvivable, I no longer approached life from a position of fear. If my marriage could end and I could not only survive but eventually thrive, what else might I be capable of overcoming? This newfound courage influenced decisions large and small. I applied for positions I might previously have considered beyond my reach. I traveled solo to countries I had always wanted to visit. I spoke truthfully in situations where I might once have remained silent to keep peace. Forgiveness, that frequently prescribed remedy for betrayal, proved more complex than platitudes suggested. I didn't forgive Michael and Rachel for their sake. They weren't even present in my life to receive such forgiveness. Rather, I released the anger and resentment for my own peace of mind, recognizing that continuing to carry those emotions only hindered my own forward movement. 2 years after Discovery Day, I stood on the balcony of my new condo overlooking Lake Michigan, watching the sunrise paint the water in shades of pink and gold. The woman I had become bore little resemblance to the trusting wife who had ignored her instincts and accepted implausible explanations. That woman had been replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more authentic. The journey hadn't been linear, and certain triggers could still occasionally stir echoes of past pain. But those moments no longer defined my present or threatened my future. They were simply scars that had healed, evidence of wounds survived rather than wounds still bleeding. My story doesn't end with another relationship providing resolution or validation. It ends with the recognition that I am complete within myself, capable of offering love from a position of strength rather than need. Whether future relationships enter my life or not, I move forward with clear eyes, strong boundaries, and an unshakable trust in my own worth. If you've experienced betrayal or suspect something isn't right in your relationship, remember that trusting yourself isn't paranoia, it's self-preservation. Have you ever ignored red flags that later proved valid? Share your experience in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation, and like this video if it resonated with your own journey. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to discovering what you truly deserve.